This has been such a great meeting. There's so much good that was said, and I'm really going to regret when I see how bad the recording is. It's so sad. But I'm still going to try to piece a lot of it together because I love so many of the things that you said, Jess, particularly in reply to questions. I thought that was really beautiful. This also really clarified something for me, this conversation, because there was nothing you said that I had to take exception to. I could think more about myself, how I fit into what you were saying. And I see that what somebody might think of as teaching, for me, is just personal confession. I don't really have a game plan here, and I don't really have any answers. So I can just talk about myself and how I see things or how I experience them. And Paul's here. I think Paul's made use of that. I know he has. So that's cool. And maybe if Paul had come to me just person to person and said, I have these questions, I could reply to them in a way that would help him. So I agree with you there, Des. I don't think it may seem that there's a space there. I guess there really isn't. It's more vocabulary. I'm just calling it confession, but it's more like if someone asks me a question, I'll just answer it.
Say a bit more. I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, I think I made a muddle of it.
Are you saying that like I've got a kind of system?
No,
and you don't? Is that
no. I'm not. What I'm saying is I don't really think there is a distinction. I think you're talking about a kind of teaching that can take place when you don't have a system, where you're taking away this, you're breaking the person out of whatever system they were in. Let's put it that way. You're showing them whatever system is too. It's like a pair of tight shoes. You can't really walk in them. You have to take that off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm there too.
So when I've read a bit about Gurdjieff, I've realized that that's what he was doing. He was breaking down those personalities, that he was kind of offending them and tripping them up, and he seemed to have a very yang and dynamic energy that, I would never be like that myself because I wouldn't be that proactive. But I think if somebody comes to me and asks for help in seeing their personality, that happens. Would you not agree that having seen your own, it's very easy to see it in others?
Yeah,
the bullshit beliefs.
Yeah, of course. I totally agree with everything you've said. I agree with your outlook. I guess I just don't like to call that spiritual teaching. It has too many negative associations. Seeing too many people hypnotized by spirituality. This is just my outlook.
Yeah.
So, I don't want that designation. I don't want to be stuck. I don't want anybody to call me a spiritual teacher. That would be uncomfortable.
Something I've noticed about the so-called spiritual paradigm is that there is all these models hanging around it.
I think that what Jez and I are talking about is remarkably the same thing. This is kind of interesting because when we chatted the first time, we seemed to agree, and yet I was left with a certain question, but that's totally resolved now. I think we're just using different vocabulary for the same thing, which is that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jez, that we both feel a sense of freedom, and somehow that happened. No one's sure how exactly. In both cases, it involved some kind of cataclysm. Mine was long illness. I didn't think I would survive. When I was done with that, I was really cooked. The awakening thing had happened before the illness, but it never really resolved. It was like a thorn in my side. And then eventually with that illness, when it came out the other side of it, I was cooked in that sense. And so you have this freedom, and then you just want to share that with people because it feels good. And not even because you just want to share it with people. The desire is there at all times. Really.
Yeah.
And so we agree on that. And names for that really don't define anything. And I think that's what John was saying.
Yeah.
That you know, it's not about how good your manners are or whatever. That's not the point. The point is to find your own mind. Your own mind, not what somebody told you to find, or some famous Ramana, whatever, said he found. So what? That was his life. Whatever he found, I hope he made his peace with it. But to take someone to this is what John was getting at, to glorify someone as a saint is to destroy your own mind. That's all it is.
Yeah, it comes back to belief, doesn't it? It comes back to belief and a projection of an ideal. And I mean, I'm certainly not talking about that, but I am describing something that is real in my experience. And I'm not looking away from that in case somebody idolizes it, because the way I talk about it, I try to leach out all that kind of projection that goes on. I'm actually trying to demystify it. I guess I could say that because it isn't all those things that they put on it. So interestingly, I totally understand what you said, Robert, about not wanting to be called a spiritual teacher because of what that word has become. It's the same way that we talked about the word seeking has become a negative kind of sullied word, and enlightenment has become. I found the definition of spiritual meaning outside of personality. So for me, when I use it in that sense, it's a positive thing. But I understand the connotations that you're talking about totally, and why you wouldn't want to have that put on you, and I wouldn't want that to be put on me. But in that definition of spiritual, if we take, this is why words are so important, isn't it? That's a use of it that is quite different. Yeah. And that's a use, I used it in that way in the book. I looked it up, I thought, well, what do people actually mean by spiritual? You know, how are we going to use it in my book? How am I going to use it? What do I mean by it? And I took that definition, I thought that actually works for me. The real spiritual, capital S, is beyond personality. And that which is beyond personality is beyond those beliefs and those emotions and those projections and all of the stuff where the mystery begins.
Well, there's this other point that you raised, kind of between the lines, which is what you were saying is, I can't quote you, but you know, I'll be damned if I let the fear of being idealized or idolized stop me, because this has to come out. I think that's what I understood. Is that what you were saying?
What I mean is that you could not talk about this because you could say it's impossible. As soon as you do, spiritual people are going to put their crap on you and reinterpret what you say. And I suppose the only thing I've found is that my job is to kick that off constantly and to preserve what is true in this, and that there is something that can be pointed to, let's say, and in some ways you could say taught. It's not that, but only taught in the sense that someone is ready and you can just, you know, this is what you're doing. Like it or not, that is what you're doing. That's what I'm doing too.
Yeah.
And so one sense it's a kind of teaching. You could interpret it as that. But once again, we're in that area that it's so dirtied, that word.
Well, but I have a personal problem with it. It's just it's just part of the way see, I don't want to use the word personality because you and I don't use it in the same way.
Yeah.
So, but now I understand what you meant by it. I totally agree.
Your character.
Well, I can't really split this into character and personality so easily. I think they blend over and the personality never goes away. It can modify by being seen, but well, you see, I have this quirk, whether it's character, personality, or something else, where being idealized is very tiresome to me.
Oh, I totally agree.
And it makes me sad also. And so
Yeah.
I rebel against it. And in order to carry on as the speaker in the chair, everybody wants to hear what this cat's saying. I get that. I would have wanted to hear what I'm saying. Then when I was young,
Yeah.
hear someone like who's speaking the way I am now, I would have considered this a gift, of course. I get that. But then when somebody thinks, well, Robert Saltzman, he's just the coolest thing, that's not good. It takes away from
But
the,
see, Robert, that's why I would say that's the difference. That's why you're awake and you're not a spiritual personality. That's a defining thing, because most of the spiritual personalities out there in teaching are hooked into that approbation, that, hey, the great master, and that's what you can tell if someone knows this or not. There's a difference. And that's one of the ways, there are signs that show people are into just what you've said I'm not into. Did you see what I mean?
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, so let me ask you a question, since you were in that Rajneesh thing in the 80s, and I noticed
Yeah.
it was a very big deal on the planet. So,
It was.
okay, so here's Rajneesh, and I actually read a couple of his books early on, before he was a big name. They'd been printed in India on that cheap paper, you know the books I mean. And I thought, this guy's really brilliant. I thought, I really like hearing this. It's cool what this cat's saying. And then a couple of years later, he's at the center of a cult. So since you were there what do you make of this? What is that? In other words, if Rajneesh really understood these things, how could he really tolerate having these celebrations going on around him all the time where he was like a god and had all these Rolls Royces and all the rest of it? I'm asking you your opinion. What is that?
It's, I can only say from the vantage point of this, you speak from the vantage point of what has happened in you, and I can speak from this vantage point. And a lot of sannyasis are going to absolutely hate this. But all I can say is what I've just said just now, really, which is that kind of bullshit doesn't happen after leaving all the personality behind.
That's what I think too. That's exactly what I think. I think that for someone in this condition, it's not possible to have that form around.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. You're going to be insulting people who talk to you that way. You're not going to be, cozying up to them. You're going to be saying, get the fuck out of here and come back when you're,
because you're prolonging their suffering. If you're not pointing out that bullshit, you're not helping them, you're doing the opposite. You're entrapping them. And I tell you, Robert, the thing that got me into the first place to read the books, and there was a real theme of organizations, religions. You got to drop it all, you got to leave it all behind. It's all bullshit. You got to drop all that to be free. And what happens a few years down the line? He's doing that. He's creating that. And he's created a lot of people who are entranced in that, hypnotically entranced in that. And this is absolute blasphemy. And I know if there's any sannyasins watching, they're going to hate me for this. But this is my observation. So take it or leave it, But that seems to be what happened. Did it create people who found this? Maybe a few, I don't know, but yeah, it was a very strange story, because he was so brilliant, you know. He was a brilliant man.
What I saw there, I think that he was very brilliant and probably really psychopathic, and I think he used hedonism as a sales tool.
I think how we got into this is a really interesting point, which is you explained an aversion you have to anyone projecting their spiritual stuff on you. And that's what, when that goes wrong, then you get cults. And, you know, there's someone out there now who's, can you imagine, Robert, somebody coming to you and wanting to kiss your feet?
No.
Can you imagine? What does that take
I can't
to allow that to happen?
I cannot imagine being motherfucking Muji. No, I can't. But here's the question. Can somebody serve as the screen for these projections? And that would be a form of spiritual teaching. That's what the Hindus all think. You know, you adore the master and you kiss his feet and all that because the master stands for Brahma. And that's what Muji,
Yeah.
that's Muji's deal.
Yeah.
Is there any sanity in that at all? Or is that?
I don't think so, because for me, this is going, like I started out saying, to bring it full circle. And the personality's escape routes and its beliefs, and anything that sends you to sleep is not helping you get free of what I would call the personality. So I don't think any of that helps you. I think there's no problem with a devotional path, that in as much as the heart is a big involvement in this and love is a big part of this. But I don't see how you can have that without this cutting that is necessary to see through the dream of personality, or the hypnosis, as you called it. I don't see how, to me, this is the practicalities of how it happened, how it happens.
Yeah, the sword of Manjushri is a very important implement in this work, for sure. And that's Manjushri is the god in Buddhism, and he's got a sword in his hand, and then he has a symbol of compassion. It might be a lotus, I don't remember. Or, no, it's a book in his hand. So it's enlightened wisdom cutting through the crowd. So, which is whenever anyone makes a claim, I always feel first, yes, and you know that how. And whenever I apply that to the claims of these various traditions, they fall short. And yet, when I discuss this with other people, they will say, well, as you said, I'm not saying you say this, but they will talk about bhakti, and they'll say, see, this is these people, when I kiss Muji's feet, I'm showing my devotion to. So I just wonder what you make of that. It's bizarre to me, but I can't see it.
Well, you're in a state of devotion, and perhaps that puts you in some ways. You can imagine that releasing endorphins. You know, you've seen the movies of them queuing up to be near him. And for me, it's like deja vu. I mean, he is the Rajneesh of our times, and he even starts to look like him with the beard and the hats and the way people are around him. I saw a video recently of Rajneesh. Haven't seen it for a while, and this memory flooded back of the way people were around him and the absolute devotion. So, and you know, it's all about getting out of your head and being in a devotional state. And it's a lovely drug, I think. You know, it can be a very nice place to go to. And you've got a daddy figure who you project all your stuff on, and he's God to you, and you don't have to take, in a way, there's no responsibility anymore. It's like, oh, he's done it, so I don't have to do it. I don't have to wake up because he's done it.
That is the exact point. we get a stand-in, and we say, this cat figured it out, And he laid out the path, and all I have to do is, climb the ladder, and I'll get there too. And it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. I know.
No, you have.
I know so many people who they're nice people, they're gentle, and they call themselves spiritual, and they got their horoscopes and their prayers and all that. And to me, they're just so deluded. It's just bizarre. And yet, when I say that to certain people I respect, they'll tell me, "Look, Robert, that's a path also, and that's bhakti, and you're not that way." But so, can you take me anywhere with that, Jez?
Yeah, the bottom line there is like, okay, does it work? Are these people finding this, or are they getting stuck in devotion? Are they finding, if they find it, they'll get the hell out of there, surely. You don't worship someone if you found what you think they've got yourself. So the bottom line is, does it work? Does it really work? And if it works, you're not going to hang around. Okay, maybe there would be a gratitude and a wanting to thank, but I can't see how you would want to be. If you find something, you don't continually look up to the person who helped you get it. You live that thing yourself and become your own light to it. I tried it for a while. I mean, I never really had that devotional thing with him, but I guess he represented something to me. And he obviously, like I said, I don't think I've ever heard a greater speaker than him. I mean, I'm talking about earlier days now, later days, something else. Incredible orator. And I had great respect for him in that way, but I didn't really have the devotional thing. So I guess I didn't really fit in with that sannyas ethos. So it didn't take me long to get out of it, but I got out of it as soon as I knew it was actually part of it was a kind of escape. So when it had turned to me from being, here's the guy who's talking about getting out of these systems and these beliefs, when it started taking on the taste of those things that he was talking about getting free of, I thought, well, I'm out. It served my purpose for me. I'm moving on. Mm-hmm. I do have great respect for what he did, but I don't look away from I always say, you have to see life as it is. And I see the brilliance of that man. And I also see the crap that went on around him. And that doesn't square with the awakened man. You can't say, I didn't know what was going on, why somebody was poisoned, why someone was killed. There's nothing to do with me. You can't have it both ways,
Okay, so we really agree on this. That's great. Glad to hear that, because everything else, which is really a pleasure.
What I love what you said is, there's a picking up of somebody starting to put that on you. And the aversion to that in you is the most beautiful thing I've heard all night. That is what this is about. To me, that shows where you're coming from. And that shows where a lot of people are not coming from. I feel exactly the same. It's like I said, oh no, don't do that. And you have to actually work to stop it happen sometimes,
Yeah, well,
you have to insert things.
I like that about you too. I mean, you did well writing your books and being a children's author, and now you don't need to have a hustle with spiritual teaching or anything. And yet, if you wanted to, you have all the right stuff, just like Rajneesh. I mean, he obviously got it at some point, but he lost it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what can happen. I see it happening actually around me in spiritual teachers. Some of them start off really good and very few of them maintain it for long. It's like being a rock star or something. Pretty soon you're in the back room getting a blowjob and the drugs and everything, and then the music comes second.
It's an interesting question, that, isn't it? It's like, how is it possible to lose this? I mean, I've written a bit about this because for me, the way I say it is there's a difference between having an awakening and what I call the shift. And that's a delineation. I think we discussed it. Because I do feel there's a point of no return. And that point is a point where what you've described just now, the antithesis, the aversion to that shit being put on you, is a quality of what I would call the shift. I don't think there's any going back from that. That's my experience. I don't know. I know people can say, how do you know? And maybe in the future you will lose this. I can't really say anything about that. What I've observed is people have massive experiences and they're very big and they're very true and important for them. And that's all good. But it's what, if the personality comes back in, is what it does with it. So if there's any need for any applause and being looked up to or manipulation of people, those tendencies in the personality have the perfect setting in which to play out. I mean, the point of this is that those desires to be special, that is the thing that drops away. That's my take on this. So if you're using this to make yourself feel special, you ain't got this. That's not what this is. That's something else. And you might have very good insights and you might have a great knowledge of Vedantic history or whatever, but that's not what I'm talking about. Or it's a different thing. Yeah. So I don't have any motivation in this other than, like, you know, I have no idea where this is going for me. I don't know what, it's not like a career or anything. Like you, I'm simply sharing. And the energetic source of it, the reason I'm doing it is simply because it wants to be shared and it's joyful to share it, most of the time anyway. And that's all it is. There's nothing else put on it. Nothing. I don't need the money, not the emptiness of what's the word? Of any needs put on it that characterize what this is. I don't need the attention or the applause, but then somebody might say, well, why are you doing it? And I'm doing it because this is the way I've been made. I do have a facility with writing and I seem to have a facility for expressing certain things, and life is doing that through me. So that gives me a fulfillment and a joy, and it's nothing more than that. Just as when I wrote books and illustrated books, I had a facility with drawing and I love to do it.
Yeah, so there's a theory in psychology by a cat named Heinz Kohut, who was a post-Freudian. I wrote about him in my PhD dissertation. He believed that what you would call character in each of us has an innate program that it wants to run, and it tries to run that. And a success is when the innate program is realized. You feel a sense of relief and release because this, what he called tension arc, has gone out of it. This program has been carried out. And I think someone like you or like me, that program involves what we're talking about here, which is freeing oneself or becoming free and sharing that. It's almost like you were born to do this.
Yeah, it's like a painter wants to paint and a singer wants to sing, and we do what we're programmed to do, how we're made. There's nothing more to it than that, and that gives a fulfillment. Fulfillment is a good word. It's a fulfillment of whatever talents were put in me and whatever talents were put in you. And personally, I find when I see people fulfilling their talent, I have a great joy in that, in whatever field it's in. You know, I love certain comedy programs. If somebody's a brilliant comic, I love it. I love seeing people who are fulfilling their talent, because that for me is the beauty, part of the beauty of life, you know.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that. Look, I'm getting tired, so I'd like to end.
Yeah, me too.
Otherwise, it could go on. It's been great speaking with you. I wish I had a better recording of it because there's been some brilliant moments. want to thank the people who were here. There's still 11 of us. And just thank you all for your presence, Amy.